right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Author Live Chat. Today, I am so excited to be here with a panel of SPFBO9 finalists. We have JDL Rosa on, RK Ashwick is on, Ryan is on, Clayton is on. And before I say anything else, I am not affiliated with SPFBO in any way, except for being a participant in SPFBO9. So if you want to read these authors' books, there are links in the description box that are not affiliate links just to pay it forward to the authors. So please go read their books. But thank you all for being here, for joining, and congratulations on making it to the finals. That's so exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
My pleasure. And good to see some familiar faces back after we did the Blitz last year too, starting off. So how many of you were here for SPFBO before 2023 versus this being your first year?
I was here before.
Yeah.
Hey, Katie's here.
Hi, Katie. This is my first year. Or SPFBO9 was my first year.
Yeah, this is my third or fourth year.
Wow. And then third time's a charm?
Yeah.
Hey,
Hi, Connor.
And Connor's here too. Oh boy.
Yeah, so we have this streaming live on both Twitter and YouTube. So if you have questions, you can drop them in the chat. I will pull them up for the authors. For those who haven't gotten a chance or who are maybe just now discovering what the self-published fantasy blog off is for the first time, so they're just seeing your books for the first time, why don't we go around? Clayton, you can kick us off, and we'll just go around the screen. Talk a little bit about what your book was that you entered in SPFBO, the kind of fantasy that it is, and sort of the blog you were assigned to.
Okay. My book was Cold West, which is kind of a dark fantasy, weird Western mixture. And I was assigned to Before We Go blog. So.
Yeah.
My name is Ryan Kirk, and I wrote The Last Fang of God, and I have always struggled to figure out exactly what genre I would put it in. Possibly sword and sorcery, although I don't feel like it quite fits. But I was part of the Queen's Book Asylum.
I felt like your book was sort of an original mythology, like dark, epic, mythological fantasy in a way.
Yeah, trying to fit it into the Amazon categories was really difficult. I think I went with adventure fantasy, and sword and sorcery was about as close as I could get. So.
Yeah. RK, welcome. I've loved everything about your book since the second I saw it on the roster last year, but I'm going to let you talk about it.
No, thank you. So this is my first year participating. I submitted Arrival Most Vile, which is a cozy fantasy romance. And my group was The Critiquing Chemist, which was very funny and also horrifying, because I was like, oh my God, I just wrote a potion book and the chemist is reading it. This is going to go terribly. And for some reason it didn't.
I mean, how much research did you do for the
I did do some research. I did. Yeah.
Went back, took organic chemistry, and
yes, yeah. Just took a semester of Orgo. No big deal.
Awesome. And Josiah, welcome. So it's such an honor to have you on the blog. I'm all tongue-tied.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Katherine. I'm Josiah, writing as JDL Roselle. My book was The Last Ranger. And it's bow and sorcery is how I call it. So we have a sort of fantasy ranger like you'd see in D&D, or an Aragorn sort of figure. And she suffers a betrayal and has to go on an adventure, a misadventure, to right the wrongs.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, and I was with Fantasy Book Critic.
Oh, yes. So we were actually competing, and as soon as I saw your book, I was like, I'm done. But this has been a great run. I think you were in there, and then A.R. Whittam was in there, and I had read The Legend of Blackjack before, and some other books that I had read before, that I was like, okay, as a book reviewer before I became a writer, I don't give many 5 stars. And there were like 3 or 4 5-star reads of mine in there, and I was like, I'm in trouble.
There was a lot of good books in our group, for sure. I think it came down to 0.05 or something like that in the score. It was very close about me becoming the finalist. So very deserving books in that group.
You know, and that's what I love about SPFBO is ultimately there's nothing better than knowing you're competing with the absolute best of the best. So no matter where you fall, it's like, oh, I fell to the best, or you know, you place among the best. So it's just a great experience around the board. But what brought you guys to SPFBO? Especially, I mean, RK, why don't you start us off? What brought you to SPFBO having never done it before?
Yeah, I had heard about it through one of the author discords that I'm a part of. There's like a thread where someone will just post different opportunities like this, and I was like, oh, sounds cool. It's free, might as well. And I was lucky enough to be in the first 30 minutes of people submitting, because last year they just kind of closed it off once they hit the 300 entries, and I think that only took 40 minutes. Which was bananas. But I just heard about it and figured I would try it.
And here you are on the finalist round. And then crazy. Clayton, on the other side, you keep coming back. So we know that the competition's got to be exciting or fun for something beyond just the winning, because you kept coming back. So what brings you back to SPFBO?
I like the punishment.
He likes the pain.
You're right. Yeah. No, I honestly, I am usually pretty desperate to get eyes on my work. Limited budget when it comes to marketing and that sort of thing, limited time. So SPFBO is a really good outlet for that to get attention on the work and to kind of highlight stuff that maybe doesn't always cross people's paths. So.
Yeah. And so did that community and feeling impact what brought you to the competition, Ryan? Or were you just like, I don't know what I'm expecting going in here?
No, this was my third or fourth SPFBO, and I don't have Clayton's track record of success, but I've been semifinalist before, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun. It was a fun opportunity to meet other authors and meet new reviewers every year. So I've just always thought it was fun, and that was excuse enough for me. So.
Yeah. And Josiah, I know this is going to tie into my next question for you guys, but what about you? What brought you to SPFBO?
Yeah, I like these other two guys. It's my fourth year. It was my fourth year submitting. So I started in 2020, one of those books where you publish it on June 1st to make sure you can slot it into the competition, right? I think there's a lot of people that do that. So yeah, it was fun the first time, made semifinals. So I was like, okay, maybe I got a shot at this. So I kept trying. Here we are.
So did you guys write the book specifically for SPFBO or publish it when you did specifically to make it into SPFBO?
I mean, I can take that one. I did not write it specifically for SPFBO. I was planning on writing it anyway. But I definitely moved the release up about 2 or 3 weeks so that it would make the deadline. I'm definitely guilty of that.
Your readers are like, yay!
Yeah, I didn't know about SPFBO until after I published. So I just got lucky in that regard.
Yeah, I think I wrote Cold West about 3 years ago, so that was more of a time release capsule.
You're like reaching back in the trunk.
Right.
I did that as well last year. I had a book that I published in 2019. I was like, okay, I ran out of books that I can submit, so I guess I'll submit this one.
Yes, exactly.
And then The Last Stranger is just my latest one, so fit naturally.
Yeah. So RK, you were a shining example of quality LGBTQ rep in Arrival Most Vile for the competition. Was it daunting because like every year Mark shows that graph, right, of how many people are, female, male, non-binary. So was it weird or like a heavy responsibility sort of holding that flag and going in here? I know there were others too, like Steve and other authors in there, but you've gone all the way to the finals here.
Yeah, I didn't see that graph. I had just wandered through this whole competition, just not knowing what was going on. At first, when I became a semifinalist, I was like, "Oh, neat." Okay, like someone else had to like tell me, like, "Hey, congrats on being a semifinalist," and I was like, "Oh, okay." And then I think I was one of the last ones to be picked as a semifinalist right before they announced the finalists. And so I want to say like a couple days later, somebody reached out to me going, "Oh, congrats on being a finalist." So I was like, "No, I was just a semifinalist." And they were like, "No, you should check the website." And then I was like, "Oh, okie dokie. Great." And these guys can tell you, throughout the finalist months, I was not reading any of the reviews or really keeping track of the numbers because that would stress me the hell out. And so, yeah, I was just, wandering along in my merry meadow, unaware of pretty much everything. So yes, equally unaware of the, I guess, lack of rep apart from rival. So I was fine with it, I guess, is the answer to my question.
Didn't add to the stress because we were unplugged.
Yep. I was basically in the woods.
That's awesome. And I agree with something we said before. I can't remember if we said this right after we went live or right before we went live, just how it was such a quality year for books overall in the competition. And that definitely goes for you guys. So I'm curious to know, especially Josiah and Clayton, your books have been out a little bit. Are these books that you self-edited, that you paid for editing? How much work went into crafting a piece that, in my opinion, all the finalists were really like publishing house level quality books, which is what SPFBO is. It brings the spotlight on these books. What goes into taking your book as an indie author and bringing it up to that caliber? Or are you just born, writing great?
Not that, I could say.
No.
Clayton, do you want to?
Sure. Yeah. I think with Cold West, it was one of my early ones, and I did all the editing myself. I did, and then I actually ended up rewriting the book entirely from start to finish. So just to make sure that I kind of had everything where I wanted it, move stuff around, that sort of thing. So it was a process to get that book out, for as small as it is. There was quite a bit of work, and one of the extra things I did was learn how to use InDesign, because I did not have access to Vellum at the time, which InDesign is Satan's tool, and I used it again. So yeah, so that was pretty much the trip for Cold West. It was just it was a ton of work, and but it was it was a learning experience. So
yeah, I like how you said that you wrote it from rewrote it from the beginning to end, and so it's been a while between. So even if you wrote the book yourself, you can come back and edit the book yourself and make it that much better in time for SPFBO 11 next year, right?
No.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about it. All I can say is no.
Because people not watching, or if you're watching, you may not know about SPFBO and the rules, but it has to be the first book in the series or a standalone. So you can't come back and go, book 1 did so good last year, let me put in book 2 this year. That's not really how that works. So SPFBO,
unless it's like a Legends and
more series.
Like if it's a Legends and Lattes sort of series, right? I think those are fairly insulated books. But yeah, other than that.
Yeah. So Ryan, how about you? What was the process like for you getting your book ready and up to where it was by the time it published and went to SPFBO?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I feel like I have kind of my systems down quite a bit. But yeah, wrote the draft. I do several drafts, several self-editing passes. And then it goes to a copy editor, and then a proofreader, and then a group of advanced readers. And then I hit publish, and then I find another typo on the first page. So that is pretty much the routine.
Tradition.
That's how it goes.
The good thing about being indie is you can change it. Can't remember if it was Nora Roberts or one of the other romance writers who didn't get the beginning of one of their first sentences printed. And so every time they did signings, they would manually write in what was missing.
Oh my God.
Oh, oh my gosh.
It's like indie.
Amazing.
We're just going to take this and redo. Do over. Yes, we always become amazing proofreaders after the books come out. Yeah. How about you, Josiah? What was your process like?
Yeah, for The Last Ranger, it was a bit of a long process, at least for me. It was about 2 years from sort of drafting it to ending up publishing it. Part of that was I was seeking a little bit more feedback early on than I usually do. So I was kind of doing a beta reader sort of thing. And I've also tried serializing it briefly on Kindle Vella. So just kind of experimenting with publishing as well, which I was glad because I ended up changing it a decent amount from that version. Cleaned it up a lot, you know. So I think those multiple iterations really helped me hone in on what I wanted to tell in this story, and who the characters were, you know, clean up the action, all that stuff. But yeah, I think another big part for me was doing a Kickstarter. So for this book, I wanted to do a little bit more for the design and the art. Then, I mean, you know, we all have budgets, you know, that are limiting in some way. And I was running up against mine and I wanted to do more than I could. So I tried doing a Kickstarter and it did pretty well for me. And I was able to add some art in there and stuff like that. So that definitely helped the process along too. And that included the editing and the proofreading too.
Yeah. Lots of revisions is what we're hearing around the board, whether you do it yourself or you hire somebody else. Revisions, revisions, revisions. RK, and you're nodding, so revisions over there too.
For sure. I would say my process is similar to Ryan's, where I went through, of course, multiple drafts. I think it took overall 1.5 years from beginning to end for the writing part of it. And I got beta readers, sensitivity readers, copy editor, proofreader, all that stuff.
That's awesome. And you guys all have, and I notice it's just across the finalists in general, so I don't know if this is a takeaway for people participating in SPFBOX in future years. All of your stories are very character-driven stories, even with the adventure aspect of Ryan's story and like the action in yours, Clayton. They are characters, like the character is front and center. This is not a plot surrounding a character and then the character is just the reason the plot's moving on. Like this is in-depth growth, pain, love, jealousy, the good, the bad of humanity on a page. What was your favorite character to write? The most fun, not necessarily your favorite character overall, because we can't pick favorites, right? But the most fun to write.
I think for me was probably Will. I mean, I was in his head the whole time, so it was just he was there with me. So it was, you know, and it was always kind of a surprise when he did something, which was interesting because I am him. So yeah,
spoken like a true character-driven author, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
right. Mostly talking to myself and then going, "Where are you going? Come back." So,
yeah. How about you, RK? Who was your most fun? Because you have two really fun characters just between the two rivals. I'm like, man, I don't know.
yeah. I think between the two, I always gravitate towards Ambrose of the two rivals. There's a lot of me in him, particularly his introverted side. He's just much more upfront about it than I am. And yeah, his voice was always just a little bit easier for me to write, even as I'm writing the sequel. Whenever I'm in his chapters, I'm like, oh yeah, this guy. So that's always kind of nice. Love that little man.
Nice. And Ryan, you've got just the
Kaylin and Sasha, yeah, the father and daughter.
I was like, I don't know how to even describe because they're so different, but they are both so crucial to the story.
Yeah, for me, the pretty easy answer for that one is Kaylin, because the entire point of the story for me was dealing with being a father, and I think I just have a lot more in common with an old grouchy father than I do with a young teenage girl.
Yeah, yeah. And Josiah, how about you?
Sure, yeah. So it'd have to be Leia. She was the main point of view. I mean, I enjoyed writing as the fox as well, but he only showed up a couple brief scenes. But yeah, Leia, she has some of my personality, definitely amplified. I'm certainly not as angry as she is. But there was a certain satisfaction. I had to like really get in a certain mindset, a really intense mindset. Sometimes you do like a little bit of exercise beforehand to get the blood pumping. I'm like, okay, now I'm like edgy enough to be her. But it was fun. It's fun writing her.
Did you listen to like some
edgy Josiah?
I want to just. I'm imagining you listening to like some 2000s emo and like rocking out in the background and.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I should have used music. I never did use music, but yeah, I'll have to use that for the next book.
There you
go. Oh my goodness. Now I've got all the old 90s and early 2000s like music songs playing through my head that could apply to her. Like, here's some Killers. Some of the Killers.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to think what really would be good for her, or any of our characters too. That'd be a fun exercise.
You gotta paint your nails and wear a t-shirt for a band that has an illegible font. Illegible fonts only work for bands, never for book covers.
So true.
Yes. So before we shift on to more specific SPFBO, I'm going to just give you guys a chance to tell us in a sentence or two, what is your book about? For the people that are hearing about them for the first time, so they can go down and click your links in the description box and go buy the books. Because there are 4 very different kinds of books here, and they're all really good. Brian,
I'll start.
You want to start us, or Clayton want to start us?
You can go, Clayton. I'll go after you.
Y'all have done this so many times over the last few years, I'm sure that you have your pitches down where I'm still like, what am I writing about?
Yeah. My book is about a sad bastard who has a bad day and then kills everybody. That's the short synopsis. Really, it's about a father who has lost his wife and is struggling to raise 2 boys and takes a job he knows he shouldn't, and just kind of the fallout from that. So.
And that's that Western fantasy. It's got sort of that gritty feel to it, but also the hopeful feel to it. Katie, that sums up Cold West perfect, accurately.
Yeah, my story is an adventure. It is a story about a father trying to take care of his daughter after his wife has passed. Boy, Clayton, we have a few things in common, I guess.
Right.
So someday when I grow up, I'm going to be as grimdark as you. But they find out in the process of the story that they need to leave the home that they had made and travel across a hostile land in an attempt to save his daughter's life.
Yeah. With some mythological undertones thrown into.
With some annoying gods thrown in the mix.
The gods are not exactly perfect in this world, which I love. I'm like, mwah. RK, how about you?
Yeah, Arrival Most Vile is about two rival potioneers who both need money, and they join forces for a lucrative commission and fall in love in the process.
And it's great.
Spoiler.
And witty and
Jeez.
fun.
Sorry.
Man, that's nothing like my book.
Did
Sorry,
one
I'll
of
have
them
to, I'll have to
have
write
it
in the harried dad in
There we
the
go.
next book. Missed
I'm beginning to
memo.
go, I lost my mother and or my spouse.
There you go.
Becoming a trend in SPFBO9.
When are we getting the Clayton RK joint project here?
Can you imagine? Like Roseman Street's on fire. Ambrose Street has lost everything, and it's time for him to go on revenge.
I mean,
Sheriff
it's
walks
a
in
little
too.
like what Katie's is a little like that. I mean, it's a little blend of both, right?
That's true. Yeah.
Nice.
This puts a whole new spin on a sheriff walks into the bar. Oh man. Josiah, how about you? If you were going to sum up your book.
Yeah, I kind of summed it up earlier. I guess was that I don't know if I was supposed to do that earlier, but I
We
did.
just had so many
Basically.
people pop on too that I didn't want people to be like, oh, because we've got a lot of people over now.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a fantasy adventure, bow and sorcery, follows a ranger who gets betrayed, loses everything, and seeks justice and revenge, and is transformed in the process.
Yeah. I felt like in some ways it made me think of what if Aragorn hadn't been so timid? It's like, I'm going to go after these people who unallowed my family. Like, okay.
With a little bit of racism thrown in too, huh? But yeah, he would have to continue.
I haven't read Becca's book yet, but I'm going to have to now.
There is a sinkhole, and I can confirm there's no cannibalism in it. Surprisingly, for this cozy fantasy romance.
Oh, man. Oh, so much fun around the board. We talked a little bit about, what it would take to get your book up to standard, obviously to make it beyond just being an entrant, because anybody can throw their books into SPFBO. And the joy of it is these 300 books for those who are joining for the first time who don't know what this is. It's a contest that's free for self-published authors, and 300 books are assigned to 10 blogs, and those blogs pick winners. Ultimately, they pick one winner and 10 finalists, which is who we're interviewing today and Friday, the finalists. So when you guys got going in SPFBO, what is something that you feel like you did very well to set up your success where you are? So obviously the book's written. So from a judging perspective, there was nothing else to do there. But there's a whole other component to SPFBO. I'm discovering, having just finished my first year, right? There's the community, there's opportunities to network. What are some things that you look back and you think, oh, I did this really well, versus things that maybe you feel like you could have done stronger or would do differently in a different year?
So on the question, so is this how we comported ourselves in SPFBO, or like how we made use of like networking? Not to do with our books, right?
Yeah, not book specific, because book's already gone. Put the book out. The judges have the book, and now what?
Yeah.
I mean, if you have anxiety like me, you just pretend it isn't happening.
So,
I'm not the right person to answer this question. I'm so sorry.
I feel like this was a very Katniss response. Like, what do we do now? We forget.
The process takes months. And so for me, if I were to like keep track of like, okay, these are the books in my groups and I'm going to read all of them, I'm going to follow the reviews, I would get exhausted, and I've got a day job. And so there are definitely other people who take great joy in doing that, and that's totally fine. But I definitely swung the other way in my process.
I think there's a lot of value there in remembering that even if you do go the other way, you have to disconnect at some point or to some degree, or you will probably burn out. Especially if you take advantage of all the stuff very early on. Like last year, I put mine in, and it was my first time doing SPFBO, and it was a lot. It was interviews, written interviews, author questions, blog questions, and this and that, and that's fantastic. That's what makes SPFBO amazing. But I was trying to do everything And then by about November, I started to really crash. And it's like, oh, if maybe I had more of a balanced approach at the beginning, I could have kept some of that momentum to go on the rest of the year. But I'm curious because you guys have gone all the way and I was out the first round. How do you feel about that approach?
I waver between being sociable and being extremely unsociable, so it depends on my mood from day to day how I'm going to respond to a survey request or an interview request or something. Typically, I try to take advantage of that stuff, but like Becca mentioned, I do have a day job. As far as the weight, I typically just occupy myself with other things. I start writing the next book. Maybe I catch up on some games I haven't played. Read stuff I haven't read yet, that sort of thing. And eventually the contest just kind of becomes background noise until the important stuff starts happening. And not that the whole contest isn't important, but there are certain points where it's like needless anxiety versus anxiety that is directly affecting you. So, you just kind of figure out what to do with your hands, and from there you go. So.
I mean, I think for me, the cool thing about the SPFBO is that in some ways it feels a little bit like a choose your own adventure, because you can decide how active you want to be in the community or not. And you can be very, very active. You could make being part of the community a full-time job if you wanted to. And there are some who are absolutely fantastic in pushing the community forward, which is really exciting. But I think that what is fun is that there are all sorts of opportunities that open themselves up when you are part of the competition. And so I think just going into it and knowing how much time and effort you want to spend into it, I ended up being a little bit like RK, where especially once the finals were announced, I needed to kind of step a little bit away because I write for a living and I was having a much more difficult time writing. And so didn't go full head in the sand, but I was kind of like, digging my feet in and, filling in my ears and doing that. So, but you get to choose. You can be as active or as quiet as you want. And either way, it can be a valuable experience.
Yeah. And you can go and come back and go and come back. Like you guys said, Clayton, you said that perfectly. It's like save your energy for the things that you need to have it for, and then focus on other things and then come back to it.
Yeah, and it helps if you're good at compartmentalizing too, because you can kind of set that stuff aside and go, okay, well, that's not my problem right now, but I'll address it later, that sort of thing. So,
yeah,
couldn't agree more. Everybody said it perfectly.
Sum it up and put a bow on it. Well, maybe you take the lead on my last question for you guys, which is really what happens now. So now that you've been finalists, there have been a whole bunch of extra eyeballs on your books. No doubt you've got readers who are clamoring for more of your books. So what comes next from the series or standalone book that you had in SPFBO9?
Yeah, I mean, write the next book, right? I guess there were a couple standalones among us. I don't know if you guys have Clayton and Ryan have plans for sequels, but Becca, I mean, you've been working on a sequel. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Did it come out?
The sequel for a different series came out in March while we were still in the final rounds. Yeah, but then the next one comes out in October. But sorry, you keep going with your series.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, I released the third book before. Yeah, so this was a month or so ago. So before everything was finished, and so yeah, I mean, I'll write the fourth book and just keep going, business as usual. But definitely, this contest has added more eyeballs, which is so appreciated. And yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. And yes, so you can start binge reading the rest of Josiah's stuff and anxiously await what is going to come next. Welcome to the waiting club. And RK, you were just saying you have yours slated to come out in October.
Yes, sequel to Rival Most Vile is going to come out in October. And then that is a trilogy along with my other trilogy. And so I'm hoping to actually wrap both trilogies next year.
Yay!
Yeah.
So happy.
We'll see if I can do it.
I love it. Okay, we got this finalist. We're knocking the last of these reads out for SPFBO9 to make way for, of course, SPFBox. But then also knowing my TBR doesn't have to wait that long because book 2 is supposed to come out in just a few months.
Yep.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, Steve.
How about you, Ryan? What comes next for you writing wise? You said you write for a living. So even though I felt like The Last Fang of God is sort of a standalone.
Yeah, Last Fang of God is a standalone. I am definitely suffering from the fantasy writer problem of thinking to myself, oh, maybe it would be fun to go back to that world. But so far, I've resisted the temptation, and I expect that I will for a little while yet. So it is still officially a standalone. But I am in the midst of releasing 2 other series, with the next release coming in June for one, and then I'll probably be later on in the fall for the next. But
June's coming up really soon.
It is coming up really soon. I keep looking at a calendar and noticing that too, and that is a little scary.
No rush.
But yeah, it's always just keep writing the next book. That has been my motto for many years, and it continues to be true.
Awesome. So don't worry if you guys found Ryan because of SPFBO. There are other books.
There are other books.
Yeah, Ryan, how many books do you have now?
That is a great question, Josiah.
Ryan has a lot of books. I was writing the other day and was like, oh.
I believe I have crossed 30, but
holy crap.
I don't know the actual number. I mean,
oh my God.
In fairness, you need to remember I've been doing this full time since 2015, so it does
still
make
though.
It does make
That's
a difference.
2015. Wow,
yeah.
I didn't know it was that long.
Yeah, it's been a while now, so getting old.
Oh, coming up on 10 years of amazing fantasy books, right?
One would hope. 10 years of fantasy books.
we need a giant celebration, Ryan. When you hit the 10-year, we need like a special Gilded Edges edition or something. We can be like, yes, a ginormous omnibus of all your books, and you can sell it for like $200.
Wouldn't fit on a bookshelf.
Right. No.
That would be. Did you guys ever see that Nerd Forge video where she did the entire, what was it, the Wheel of Time series in like one book for Daniel Green? It would be like that.
Amazing.
You're right, Steve. Yeah, Connor, that's what I'm saying. That's a ton of books.
Yeah. Yeah, they say you should write 3 to 4 books a year. Ryan has taken it and run with it. But there is so much to be said for that. I've only been doing this seriously as an indie author since 2021. And I miss so many of the talented indies who have gone in that short time that started around when I did. And it's like, put their books out, put the work in. I saw them everywhere and then just faded out. And it's heartbreaking. So it's also inspiring to be here with a group of people who have been writing 3, 4, 5, 10 years. You know, it's like you can keep doing this. And RK, you know, balance, like you said, balance is everything. Clayton, how about you? What can we expect? Anything more from that world, or should we pick up some of your other work?
Yeah, so it's been pointed out to me that I don't write exactly consumer-friendly books. So
Grimdark is exactly consumer friendly. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm being bullied right now to write a consumer friendly book, and it's
don't listen to the bullies.
Right.
You're on a dark/grimdark authors channel right now. You are welcome to talk about your grimdark books. Tell them about Tepid East, Clayton.
Right. Yeah. So I'm writing East. Yes. It's a more of a traditional fantasy is what I'm writing right now. But I will come back to Cold West eventually. You know who's bullying me. It rhymes with Schmistel. And Ryan, I have a question for you, Ryan.
Oh boy.
you've written 30 books, right?
Yeah.
So do you pour the amphetamine right on your cornflakes, or is it in the
Oh my God, we're in PvP zone.
Performance enhancing drugs, that's where it's at.
Wow.
Fair enough.
David Green came on. Do you guys know David Green from the community? So David Green came on the channel not long ago, and we were talking about how David does some ghost writing on the side, because David writes so much, like more than any human being I know. Really, is David just book, and gave some tips in there, and I was just like, the diligence that goes into writing a book. I'm just like, man, if I could actually find the dedication or whatever it is to sit down and completely finish a book in 60 days, like regularly, every 60 days, new book, I'd be like, okay.
I can't even imagine.
Oh my
Though
gosh.
I feel like so much of it comes with experience. And Ryan, you have been doing this for a really long time. And so like you've been able to, I mean, maybe I'm speaking for you, but you've been able to like nail down your process a little bit better. And you're not maybe like floundering as much. I feel like with every new book I'm doing, I'm always like, I don't know what I'm doing and I need to change my process. And so I'm still like, I don't know, figuring things out.
I mean, it took years for me to get to something that is in any way repeatable. Like my first couple of books, I was still working full time and doing all of that. And then I would listen to a podcast about somebody who had some fancy outlining method, and then I try that. And I mean, it took me years. So don't think it happens overnight.
Listen, you must be well adjusted too, because I get to about my 10,000th word, and I start screaming about it being garbage, and I start over every time.
Yeah. So, but so Clayton is writing more books.
I see the bully has showed up.
Oh.
Where? Who? Let me at him.
Oh. I figured that's who it was.
Yep.
Oh man, all in good fun though, and all in good fun here. So thank you all so much for taking the time. I know you've probably been swamped, just with writing and life and SPFBO and everything, but it means a lot that you would take the time to hop on and chat with me and talk about your books, talk about SPFBO. This is such a well-deserving group, and I shared about your books on my channel a couple days ago and read the blurbs for all of them off. So if anybody's watching and you want to hear the blurbs, you can go watch that video on the SPFBO playlist. But I said in that video, and I really do mean it, this is one of the best groups of finalists really that I could imagine having had participated in with SPFBO. As a participant myself, I'm just so honored that you guys are representing the indie community and the best of indie books. So thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. We
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. This probably would have passed completely under the radar if it wasn't for somebody telling you.
I just imagine Clayton was like, "Oh yeah, Thursday, no big deal. You should definitely come."
Yes. And so we will be back with another group of SPFBO9 finalists on Friday. We actually have Katie, who's watching live, CM Kaplan, who's watching live right now, and then a couple of others. And you're going to have to come tune in to see who they are. We are not going to be talking to Morgan, but we send much love and congratulations to Morgan for winning SPFBO9. Thank you all again. I look forward to reading more of your work. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.